We're going to call to order a meeting of the Bridges and Tunnels Committee. Do we have any public speakers? Murray? Was it 2 minutes? Mr. Bowden, you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
This is, my name is Murray Bowden. I introduced myself as Mike Rowe at the first meeting on Dirty Jobs. This one's even worse. I am recommending to the MTA that they replace the management of bridges and tunnels as being incompetent and being out of touch with reality. They have zero idea of how to replace gateless tolls and easy pass. It is a very serious and symbolic issue. If they can't figure out how to do that one properly, how many other millions of dollars are they wasting in other areas? They've constructed a gantry for readers where they could have used underneath the West Side Highway. They have 4 easy pass lanes where 2 belong. And they come in here and they read reports and they give you information which is absolutely useless. There's a book that I learned years ago called How to Lie with Statistics. They're lying with statistics right out of that book. And I will come to every single meeting until it is understood that the information provided by the management of bridges and tunnels is erroneous, misleading, and costing the MTA multiple millions of dollars. I would stay for the rest of the meeting, but my grandson is playing basketball JV at Cornwall High School this afternoon, and without a doubt, it's more important to watch that basketball game than to sit here. Thank you.
Mr. Bowden, thank you. Good luck to your grandson. Any other public speakers? Okay. Hearing none, we'll move the agenda. We have approval of minutes. We have a motion, a second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next item on the agenda, approval of the committee work plan. Are there any changes to the plan?
No changes to the plan, but I'd like to acknowledge for the committee acknowledgement on the 2012 work plan as you see in the book. Looking for an approval from the chair and the committee.
I move that the work plan be adopted as proposed until we, of course, change it next month.
Okay, motion, second. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move forward with the report on operations. David?
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. On page 17, the report on operations begins. In November 2011, there were 23,443,000 crossings, which was a decrease of 573,000 over the prior November. Looking at factors that affect travel, rainfall totals for the month were higher than they were a year ago. The average price of gasoline, a gallon of gasoline, was $3.60, which was 59 cents higher than last year. But on the bright side, it was the 6th consecutive month that the price declined since its peak in May of 2011. And finally, bridges and tunnels crossing charges were increased on December 30th of 2010. Looking at customer trends, Easy Pass crossings for the month were up 2% versus November of 2010. Cash paying crossings were down 17%. Passenger vehicle travel was down 2.5%, and truck travel decreased by 0.3%. All facilities had fewer crossings, ranging from 0.9% lower at the major Manhattan crossings to 4.9% lower at the Henry Hudson Bridge. Year-to-date through November, there were 259.8 million crossings, which is 8.9 million fewer than a year ago. Finally, we have some preliminary data for December. We estimate approximately 23.7 million crossings, which is 0.8 million higher than December of 2010, which we anticipate to be mostly weather-driven because of the severe weather we had in December of 2010. That ends my report. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
I have an observation, if I could. If you look at the decline in travel on some of these crossings, the RFK Bronx, the Brooklyn Battery, and the Henry Hudson are amongst the highest, and I would tell you that that's probably because each of those three has a free bridge alternative. And that's where a lot of this traffic is going. And that's why, tolling all the bridges would equalize traffic, it would cut fuel usage, it would cut pollution. There's just so many good reasons. But that's what's happening at those three. I can almost guarantee you. You'll see a concomitant increase in the Broadway Bridge, in some of those other Harlem River bridges, and in the Brooklyn Bridge or Manhattan Bridge. So you don't have to be a genius to figure that out.
Do we have the power to turn over the toll-free city bridges to your authority?
Okay, moving along. Any other comments?
Okay. If there are no other questions, Andy Petrovich will continue the report and talk about safety for the month of November.
Good afternoon. On page 30 and 31 are 4 charts and 4 graphs covering the customer vehicle collisions and injury collisions and the employee accident reports and lost time injuries through November. If you could please note that the injury rate per million vehicles has remained steady at historically low levels, and that for the employees, there are 8 less lost time employees than last year, with the frequency rate dropping 5.4%. And unless there are any questions, that concludes my report.
Any questions? Moving on.
Move to the Easy Pass performance report. Tom, page 33.
Thanks, Jim. The report shows that our Easy Pass market share was 80.7% in November, which is up 3.5% from the year before, which continues the trend that we've been seeing. And again, every facility was up from the previous year. More than 10,800 Easy Pass accounts were opened in November, bringing the year-to-date total to about 160,000, more than 14,000 more than last year at the same time. And more than 3,900 on-the-go accounts, Easy Pass on-the-go accounts were opened in November, more than 1/3 of the total. And these on-the-go sales continue to benefit from our new initiative to sell tags at the Henry Hudson. We sold more than 8,000 to date, including more than 850 in November. And since the on-the-go program began, we've sold about 150,000 of those tags, more than 75% of which have been registered. There's no question on the Easy Pass report. I'll move on to the financial report, which begins on page 39. Toll revenue for November was up about $2.7 million against the mid-year forecast, about 2.2%, and that's primarily due to higher than planned traffic, about 0.9%, and also a higher than forecast average toll. Year-to-date against the mid-year, we're still down about $4.3 million through November, about 0.3%, and that's due primarily to the effects of Tropical Storm Irene. On the expense side, we're about $8.8 million lower than the mid-year forecast in November. That's primarily due to timing of maintenance and other operating expenses and materials and supplies. Overtime was more than 23% lower than planned in November. Year-to-date against the mid-year, our expenses are about 12% lower than planned due to positive variances in the same categories due to timing. We expect to catch up on many of those in December. Overtime through the year for November was down $1.8 million, about 9% better. And our support to mass transit through November, more than $886 million, which is almost 7% better than planned. That concludes my report. If there's any questions.
You guys deserve enormous praise for reducing expenses, especially overtime like that. I know it is not easy, but congratulations, and we will give it as little publicity as possible.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Yes, thank you.
We'll move on to the capital program. Joe?
Good afternoon. The report on the capital program can be found on page 53 of the book. This month's report reflects commitments, completions, and closeouts for the month of December, as well as a look back and summary of the capital program performance for the entire year of 2011. For details of December's activity, if you can refer to page 54 of the report. In December, there were 12 commitments made with a cumulative value of $28.9 million. These commitments included a steel repair project at the Henry Hudson Bridge that was accelerated to take advantage of the favorable construction market, as well as several significant design awards at RFK, Queens Midtown Tunnel, and Marine Parkway Bridge. There were 2 major completions made in December, including the design-build contract for the replacement of the Harlem River Drive ramp to the RFK Bridge, which was completed ahead of schedule. As previously reported, this was B&T's first application of design-build to this type of infrastructure work. For the year as a whole, if you refer back to page 53 for a summary of B&T's capital program performance, in 2011, B&T made 114 commitments versus a planned 103 commitments. The total value of commitments made was $366.8 million. That compares to a planned $621 million, bringing actual commitments to about 59% of the planned. The variance between actual and program commitments is largely attributable to favorable market conditions. In fact, as you can see from the table on page 53, favorable bids and proposals resulted in savings of $261.9 million to the program. Major commitments made for the year are listed in attachment 2, which is on page 56 of the report. In terms of completions, 2011 was a very successful year. There were 6 completions made with a value of $108.5 million. This compares to a planned 4 completions with a value of $84.1 million. So actual completions were 29% better than planned. Major project completions for the year are shown at the bottom of page 53. For closeouts, B&T closed out 12 tasks in December at a cumulative value of $112.9 million. This brings our annual closeouts for 2011 to $409.9 million. Unless there are any questions, that completes my report.
Anyone who can save $261 million on what you thought you were going to award and what you actually paid out in the awards or agreed to pay out in the awards is incredible. Usually the board takes credit for all of these things, but in this particular instance, we expect you to commence with this perfection and continue to improve next year. But it's an amazing, amazing statistic.
Well, yeah, I'd also like to commend you on this as well. This not only is you're getting the same amount of work done. We're paying a lot less money. It's capital money, so there's debt service that's attributed. So you're putting less pressure on the toll, people who are paying the tolls, the people who are paying the fares, and on the system. So this is a really important savings that you guys have achieved there, and good job.
Thank you.
Yes.
I certainly would add my thanks and praise for that performance. Could you just mention what is happening on the Henry Hudson, on the, I guess it would be the northbound side? There is some construction in or around the toll booths.
Yeah, there's an ongoing capital project, HH10, which is to replace some of the last remaining parts of the old original construction from the 1930s that remains on the upper level off the bridge. The project is
moving along pretty well, and it's replacing the sidewalk in the what they call the curb stringers fascia steel, which was, as I said, original construction from the 1930s. That is really the last piece on the upper level that needs to be addressed. So that is the project that you see.
Going across, or are you talking about?
Yeah, going north on the Henry Hudson. So the project is on both. As you go north, it's on
the left side.
On the left side, and it's going to switch over to the other side in this year ahead.
Okay. But is there anything happening with the crossing equipment, the booths, and so forth? It seems to be, but
that project does not address the toll plaza. There is a separate work that is in the program in the future to address the upper level toll plaza structure, which also needs some rehabilitation. But the project you see now is on the main bridge itself. But the maintenance of traffic for that project extends back into the toll plaza area.
But we would be spending money on a toll plaza rehabilitation in the face of gateless tolls.
The project in the program for the toll plazas is being planned in very careful sort of alignment with the toll plaza policy in general. So we're going to move forward in concert with the decisions that are being made about tolling policy.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Procurements?
Move on to procurements. Tony Kessler, please.
Thank you, Jim. Good afternoon. There were 4 procurements this month totaling about $11.3 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. The 4 procurements are competitive and are summarized as follows. Starting on pages 75 and 76, there is a request for a personal service contract with the joint venture of Weidlinger Associates, Inc. and Parsons Brinckerhoff to provide design and construction support services for Project TN49, entitled Deck Rehabilitation Replacement of the Suspended Spans at the Throgneck Bridge in the amount of $4,837,207 for design services only. At a future date, the cost for design services during construction will be presented to the board for approval. The next procurement is on page 77. It is a miscellaneous service contract with Summit Security Services, Inc. to provide armed guard services at locations within the New York City area in an amount of $5,542,329. If you'd please turn back to page 73. Item 3 is a miscellaneous service contract with JG Electrical Testing Corporation to perform maintenance, testing, repair, and inspection of low and medium voltage electrical distribution equipment located at various facilities in the amount of $739,800. The last item on page 78 is a modification to a personal service contract with Parsons Transportation Group of New York, Inc. in an amount of $202,203 to provide additional design services during construction for Project TN82B. The interim repair of orthotropic deck structures on the approaches at the Throgneck Bridge. And this month, there are no ratifications.
Okay, so we have, do I have a motion on the procurements? So we have a second. Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carries.
Thank you.
And it's our report.